Hey everybody, it's your boy, and well, not long after I make the video about the end of sanitary fascism is coming, which I still believe the end is nigh, believe it or not, but whatever, that could be a different video. Literally just a few days after that video, news broke of a party at number 10 Downing Street involving all the MPs of the Tory party and possibly others during the height of the Christmas restrictions, when we were put back in a second lockdown and we were told that Christmas was cancelled. We couldn't visit our families, we couldn't do this, that and the other, although we could go and get all our presents for these people, because I remember working during that brief period of semi-freedom, as they would have liked to have told us it was. But then it turned out there were other parties, and these parties were during the height of lockdown in November. This sparked outrage with accusations of hypocrisy and further evidence of Tory sleaze and wrong rule for me and not for thee. We all understand what's been going on. It's been going on since the very beginning with Neil Ferguson, all those other people across the political spectrum. It's not just the Tories, but Labour Party MPs, Liberal Democrats, all were breaking lockdown because they're MPs, they're the experts, and they can do whatever they want because they themselves know that this pandemic, which is now endemic, let's be honest about it guys, is not as serious as they like to say that it actually is. They put the fear of God into millions of people, saying that COVID could be the end of the NHS, the end of the world as we know it, the end of our country, the destruction of all our lives if we don't lock down and then have mandatory vaccines and mandatory vaccine passports, and yet they turn around and do the very opposite of what they tell us to do. And this came out because of a leaked video from ITV News where there were a load of journalists talking to a spokeswoman. For some reason, this was not made public. That raises further questions as to why ITV chose to rest on this footage, as opposed to just release it straight away, but hey, you know, details. And in an effort to either distract or to combat Omicron, because now it's Omicron that we have to worry about, not Delta, like it was back in those days when they were having their little parties, the government announced that on Friday, the 10th of December, a day after recording this video, there will be yet further restrictions. Already, as I mentioned in the previous video, there's been a new mask mandate, which has not been followed by most people in this country, I would say. And now we have to have mandatory vaccine passports, and masks will be used in even more indoor settings than they were before. Why? Well, either it's because it's a distraction for the mess that the Tories got themselves into in regards to the parties that they were doing during lockdown and during Christmas, or they legitimately think that Omicron is dangerous and unknown, even though we have reports coming in from South Africa specifically and other places that suggest that it really isn't that bad. It's very mild, even if it is potentially more infectious, but even then, so what if it's more infectious? If it doesn't kill as many people, which by the way, it's killed 0 people, Alec Baldwin has killed more people than Omicron, then what's the problem? Why are we panicking over this strain that is even weaker than the other strain, Delta, which was even less severe than the original one that hit our shores way back in 2020? Or it could be that maybe they're being influenced by the likes of Sage and the so-called experts into doing this because, well, they have their own ulterior motives, which we've discussed on this channel and other channels I've discussed previously before. Now, I don't understand how it could be a distraction, because surely these restrictions would make that even more apparent, the hypocrisy in regards to the parties. Surely that would make people even more angrier, because now they can see this as, oh, this is just almost a punishment criticism that they received. People would think about it even more and think, well, hang on, they don't follow the rules, and yet they're now saying that we should have yet more rules foisted upon us. Why should we follow them? Surely this will actually make people even less likely to follow the mandates. I personally think that this is the wrong decision for them to make. It's terrible policy. I just don't buy that this is a distraction. It's a very terrible distraction if that is the case. I think that most likely some of them are thinking, yeah, this could be a good distraction. Maybe this will make people criticise the policies as opposed to what we were doing way back in December and November. But surely the criticisms of the policy will be part and parcel with also criticisms of their behaviour. It's a very bad distraction because stuff like this is so transparent. People aren't that stupid. Again, as I mentioned before, this has further incensed people, at least online. I know Twitter isn't the real world, but again, I see more and more people, and increasingly people on the left. Gary Neville has come out, who's a bit of a left wing. He's a football analyst for Sky Sports, but he's become a bit of a mouthpiece politically recently. Even he's saying that this is unacceptable. Loads of people are. It's slowly but surely uniting people, even if they're against each other still. Maybe it's too little too late, but I'd rather us fight now than never. And this, I have to say it guys, is crunch time. We have yet more restrictions. It's not a lockdown, but we have mandatory vaccine passports, and I think they're going to try and pass mandatory vaccinations. Now, obviously, they can't do that right now, but who's to say that they won't do it in the near future? It only took 20 months to go from washing your hands to you must be vaccinated in order to go to this place. You must have your passport to do this. Just to go to the local supermarket. Just to go to the pub or anything else like that. This is crunch time, guys. Are we going to further support these lockdowns by compliance? Or are we going to be disobedient and not follow them whatsoever? If you are a person who wants to go back to how life was pre-2019, even though it wasn't sunshine and rainbows, you better start acting like life is 2019. You must be civil disobedient. You must reject the law or the mandates or whatever it is that the government is imposing on us and live life on your own terms, and you must encourage other people to do so. Otherwise, you'll just be complying. Now obviously, not all of us can non-comply 100% of the time because a lot of us have jobs. We work in places like in pubs or in venues or in shops, retail outlets, malls, etc. that will require us to some extent comply, because if we don't comply, that could mean the end of our jobs and being unable to feed ourselves and our families or pay the rent. For some of us, we can only comply sometimes and not comply other times. But those of us who don't have that issue, there is no excuse, don't comply. And also, I would say, try and use the government's own legislation against them, because for those of you who don't know, the reasons for not having a mask, the reasons for not having a passport are actually quite easy to abuse if you look at what actually are the criteria for being exempt. So for example, on either the NHS website or the government website, it clearly states that just finding wearing a mask distressing is enough to get an exemption. Well, we all find it distressing, don't we, to some extent? So why not? You're not telling lies, you're telling the truth, you find it distressing because of this, that and the other. Get an exemption. What can they do? They can't argue with that, they can't read your mind, you're not telling lies anyway. Go ahead, use it to your heart's content. And as for the vaccine passports, if you're autistic, like I am, you are also exempt. Although also, considering I also caught the disease recently and I've now fully recovered, I also have immunity to COVID, at least the variant that I got. Maybe even this new Omicron one, I don't know. I might not, I might do, it depends. That might also be a way to get exempted from the pass. Now, I don't know if that means that you have to have a card or something in order to say that you are exempt, so you can just walk in. So essentially, you still have a pass anyway. I would still suggest you try and find loopholes, try and find ways that can make you exempt. Legally, obviously, because you don't always have to do it illegally. You don't have to do what this unfortunate man did, who had a fake vaccine passport and was worried that he was going to get arrested and his life ruined, so he killed himself and his family. We don't want any of that to happen. There are ways to do this without having to break any laws. It seems to me that they haven't done their due diligence, and this can be easily exploited, shall we say. This is crunch time, as I keep saying. This is crunch time for the British people, and to a lesser extent also people in Europe and in America, because they're going to ramp this up as fast as they can, as hard as they can, to break you, because they know the end is nigh, because more people are waking up. They realise that the elites, the experts, they don't care. They know it's not that bad. They treat this whole endemic virus that used to be a pandemic as what it really is, not that much of a threat. This isn't bubonic plague, this isn't smallpox, this isn't polio, this is essentially part of the family of flus and colds. I have had colds. I had a cold before I caught the disease that was worse than COVID. Now, obviously, I'm a healthy 28-year-old, or 27 as I was back then, so it's not as much of an issue for me as it would be for somebody who's 55 and overweight. But still, it's not that bad. They know it's not that dangerous, and this Omicron variant may yet be the least dangerous variant yet. So live how they live. Live how you want to live. Be an example to others, and if a lot of you continue to do this, as more of you continue to be disobedient and live life as it was before all this happened, more people will follow, because people are sheepish, and some people are just scared because they feel alone and isolated. We need to be the examples to these people who are just a little bit scared, who think they're isolated and alone, because that's what the media and the government want them to feel, that they're alone, that they're surrounded by idiots who want to mask up and be boosted forever and ever and have lockdowns forever and ever, those people need to know that they're not alone and can be free. Support those people. And yet other people will copy you because they will say, well, if they're just ignoring it, why can't I? The government do it anyway, and then it will be a domino effect, and these restrictions won't last past the spring, if even this winter. That's obviously the most optimistic forecast. Obviously, it may last for months on end. We don't know what's going to happen. As I said in my last video, that we have to be cautiously optimistic, which means you have to be fully aware of any curveball that may be thrown against you. And to be honest, this is a little bit of a curveball, but essentially I think this is just them panicking and lashing out, and it's just not going to end well for them. I think Boris Johnson after this has lost all legitimacy. He will become a lame duck after this. He's lost all respect. Only the most fervent Tory, only the most fervent lockdowner who may or may not like him will support these measures, and they are increasingly becoming a minority, and not a very stubborn one at that. So anyway, remain cautiously optimistic. Stand up and be counted, everybody. Until next time, it's been your boy, and I'll see you all later.